Will is a young man from a poor neighborhood with a brilliant mind. He works as a janitor at a university. One day, Professor Gerald gives his students an impossible challenge, solving a math problem that only a few people have ever managed to solve, and those who did took years to do it. While Will is cleaning the hallways, he stumbles upon the problem, takes it home, and tries solving it in the mirror in his bathroom. The next day, without anyone noticing, he grabs a piece of chalk and writes the solution on the board. Despite his intelligence, Will is also a troubled kid. One day, he recognizes a guy who used to bully him in high school and decides to take revenge, beating him mercilessly. When a cop tries to intervene, Will fights back and ends up arrested. Meanwhile, Professor Gerald asks his students who solved the math problem, but no one raises their hand. It isn't until he catches Will writing on the board again that he realizes this janitor is the math genius. As soon as Will is caught, he runs away. Later, Will meets up with his friends at a bar, where he impresses Skylar with his intelligence. Intrigued, she gives him her phone number. Professor Gerald, meanwhile, tracks down Will, asking around until he finds him at a court hearing for attacking the cop. Given Will's criminal record of theft and violent behavior, the judge sentences him to jail. However, Gerald manages to get him out on two conditions. Will must attend his math class and go to therapy. Will starts seeing therapists, but refuses to open up and mocks them until they can't handle him anymore. As a last resort, Professor Gerald asks his old friend, therapist Sean, for help. Sean agrees to meet with Will. In their first session, Will tries his usual tactics, attempting to break Sean by bringing up his wife and making false claims about her. This crosses a line for Sean, who grabs Will by the neck and warns him never to disrespect his wife again. After the session, Will goes on his first date with Skylar. They connect instantly, enjoy each other's company, and even share a kiss by the end of the night. Despite the rough start, Sean doesn't give up and meets Will again. This time, they meet at a park, and Sean confides that his wife died of cancer. He encourages Will to trust and open up, because if he ever wants a better life, he will need to learn how to express himself. This scene highlights how important it is to talk about our feelings. Talking helps heal. As Christian Dunker once said, "The way we talk about our pain changes how we experience it." Talking allows us to observe, understand, and reframe what we've been through. After the session, Will tries to call Skylar, but hesitates and hangs up before speaking. Will and Sean meet again. As they build more trust, Sean asks if Will has a girlfriend. Will talks about Skylar and admits that he hasn't contacted her since their first date because he's afraid she'll find him imperfect. Sean tells him that no one is perfect, and that the most important thing is being perfect for each other. He shares a funny story about his late wife, explaining that while she was the most beautiful woman to him, she also used to fart in her sleep. Both laugh, and the conversation brings them closer. What Sean says is true. Nobody is perfect. Looking for perfection is setting yourself up for disappointment. Love isn't about finding someone without flaws. It's about finding harmony despite those differences. True love accepts imperfection. Encouraged by Sean's advice, Will calls Skylar and they go on a second date, having a great time together. However, when Skylar asks Will about his family, he lies, saying he has 12 siblings because he's afraid to admit that he's an orphan. In another session, Will asks Sean if he ever regretted meeting his wife, given that she passed away and left him with so much pain. In response, Sean tells Will the story of how he met his wife while waiting in line for a baseball game, a game that later became historic. Will gets excited to hear that Sean was at such an iconic event, but Sean surprises him by revealing that he didn't attend the game. Instead, he left to spend time with the woman who would become his wife. Will is shocked that Sean chose to miss such an important event for a girl, but Sean explains that he never regretted missing that game, nor meeting his wife. Despite the pain of losing her, the joy of having her in his life was worth it. Meanwhile, Professor Gerald talks with Sean about Will, and they argue because they want different things for him. Gerald wants Will to become a mathematician, while Sean believes that Will should choose his own path Skylar is moving to California to continue her studies and wants Will to come with her. Will says he can't, and when Skylar presses him on why he's afraid of commitment and why he lied about his family, Will loses control. He admits that he was an orphan and spent most of his life being moved from one foster home to another, where he was abused. Skylar cries and tells him she loves him and wants to help him, but Will, in his fear, lies again, saying he doesn't love her, and leaves. Professor Gerald convinces Will to attend a job interview as a mathematician. Will goes to the interview but makes no effort to get the job. He simply doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. Or maybe he's afraid to listen to what his heart truly desires. Will says goodbye to Skylar as she's leaving for California. She, still hopeful, tells him she loves him, but Will, scared of getting hurt, avoids saying how he really feels. In his next session with Sean, the therapist brings out a file containing photos of Will covered in bruises from the abuse he suffered from his foster father. Sean reveals that his own father was an alcoholic who also abused him and his mother. As Will listens, memories of his past flood back. Sean stands in front of Will and tells him that none of what happened was his fault. Will tries to brush it off, but Sean repeats it again and again. It's not your fault. Finally, Will breaks down, crying and hugging Sean as he begins to release the pain of his past. This scene serves as a reminder that many people grow up believing that they are to blame for the pain they've experienced. If you're one of those people, let this be a reminder. It's not your fault. You are only responsible for your actions, not for what others do to you. Maybe it's time to free yourself from that burden, a weight no one should carry for life, as it keeps you from moving forward. Will finally lets go of his heavy past and is ready to move on with his life. He tells Sean that he's going to accept one of the job offers that Professor Gerald found for him. They hug and say goodbye, with Sean reminding Will to always follow his heart. This last piece of advice resonates with Will. In the end, he writes a letter to Sean, telling him that he decided not to take the job and is heading to California to find Skylar, just like Sean followed his heart when he chose love over a historic baseball game. Like Sean, Will chooses to follow his heart. He drives off toward California, ready to confront his fears, find Skylar, and live a life guided by his true desires. The film closes with Will on the road, heading toward a new chapter in his life, hoping that this time, love and self-trust will allow him to live authentically and free from his emotional burdens.